As I understand that, okay, I think most of you already have an IT background for sure. And I think Rasika, you are coming in from the HR background already. And I think Nikhil and others, you are also having about overall how the ITSM works out there. Okay. So we will mainly start with our focus onto the success factors, what success factor is, what kind of and HR processes it covers, right? So that is where we will start with in terms of our syllabus out there. So that's where we will also be talking about what is an core HR process or the an employee central module, how these particular core HR process are being captured into the success factors. This particular, when we talk about all these particular core HR processes, that means we are talking about right from the hiring of an employee till and termination, whether it is any sort of and transfer promotions which are being happening, how all those particular processes are being covered into an employee central module of the success factors, right? So we covered the first we covered the introduction of the success factors overall. What are the different modules, what are the different processes which are being applicable within the success factors, which all the different the processes are being covered by the different flow of the process, right from the onboarding to the recruitment to the core HR employee central to the payrolls and then the final terminations and the benefits and so on. While we covered that in our first session, then we switch on to this core HR processes, hire to termination. The focus is completely onto that this core HR employee central modules of it. Then once we understand this particular overview, then we deep dive into the employee central and its features. Then we talk about that, okay, what are the different things, components which are being involved into the employee central. Right now, the latest things, how these particular release managements and everything which are being happening, how these particular latest features gets incorporated into the success factors. That is also something we cover. In this particular course, mainly we focus in terms of if at all you are being given a complete new project, how that particular project life cycle would be working on, right? So that particular life cycle will cover right from the procurement of the or getting that particular instance. How do we enable those particular instance for the different customers altogether? So those particular aspect, a few of those particular aspect that we cover. Then we deep dive into that, okay, what kind of and different workshops are being conducted and how do we gather the all different sort of and requirements. And then we go on to the deep dive into that, okay, how we are going to configure this particular core HR or the employee center, which will cover us with the different set of the data models. Those key models that we cover up are the succession, corporate and country specific data models, which we are talking about. Then we talk about the different foundation objects which are already being available and how do we ensure that, okay, the different administrations of it, whether it is from an admin perspective, whether it is from an end user perspective, how those are being maintained into the system, how do we create new set of the foundation objects and new set of the data out there. So all those particular things we covered during our foundation data, the foundation details perspective. Then we cover up the key concept in terms of the metadata framework or the MDF objects. These objects are nothing but your different organization structures, how it is going to form up. So every organization will have its own set of structures, whether it comes across the position, it comes across about an organization unit or a business group as such which are being there between the business group. Then it will have a multiple levels of it also being available, that below the business unit then you will have a vertical units, horizontal units which are being there, then followed by and departments which are being there. Within the department you will also have a different set of the teams which are being there, and then finally you will have and ground level teams which are being working on, right? So how we ensure that, okay, all these particular newer structures can be incorporated into and success factors organizational management or the employee central model. Every organization, if you go in, they will have their own structure. So we will talk about in detail that, okay, how we ensure that using the standard objects which are being available, we are able to cater to all these particular different set of the organization module needs. Okay, so that is something that we cover up in the details about this particular MDF object. Here we also go and deep dive into that. Okay, if there are specific scenarios which are not able to cater by the standard objects which are being available. So let's say, for example, some of the requirements which we need to capture in terms of the onboarding, right? Sometimes some of the organization also captures that, okay, where exactly you are going to park your vehicle, whether you require any sort of and gym memberships or those particular ones, right? So how do we capture those set of the data, right? So that for that particular reasons, how do we create the new set of the MDF objects, and using those not only just objects, but into that particular object, how do we incorporate the different workflows and ensure that different permissions are being given at the different persona level, whether it is employee who is entering the data, how does the business partner able to see it, and so on and so forth. So that would be an end-to-end process that we cover up during our custom MDF objects as well, so that you get to know that, okay, in future if there are any sort of an custom processes which are coming up, how we are able to cater that within the employee central module. Once we covered up the key concept about the MDF object, then we jump on to the different association or the relationships also. Sometimes it's being called up. So how this particular different relationship between the different objects form together, how we are ensuring that if there is a specific department, division, business units, whatever is being selected, the corresponding departments are only being available out there for the next level of the selections. And that is where, from an end user perspective, it helps us to reduce down the errors and improve the data quality as well. These are some of the key aspects that any of the projects, implementation projects, or any of sort of and support projects which are being there, where these kind of and requirements would be asked to you, right? So that is something we cover into these particular associations and a pick list perspective as well. So once we covered these the key base foundation, then we jump on to the next set of the uh, key aspects, which covers about the different organization structures, position management, and then from an employee data perspective, the personal data and employment data. So in SuccessFactors, they have a two key set of the data structures which are being there, how the data is being stored and all. So one is about this personal data, what we have it, and then we have the employment set of the data, how these particular data are being stored. Now we are latestly be talking about and full profile enablement, where individual profiles will have a different set of the cards which are being available. So we will go through in details about these different cards which are being available, how we are able to move this particular card, how we are able to ensure that, okay, these particular cards has a relevant permissions which are being available. So all those particular aspects about the full profile, about different set of the employment data and the personal data of an employee being stored there. Now, when we covered about this foundation, MDF, this employee data perspective, then we will deep dive into the different business rules. Business rule is very effective tool in the success factors. This is what you decide that, okay, how we are able to apply the different set of the validations, how we are able to apply a different set of defaulting of the fields. That means some of the fields are we are pre-populating into the system rather than user entering those particular fields data. And this is something which helps us in terms of reducing the data entries objects which are being there. So end user does not have to, but obviously whatever is combination of the data, then they do not have to re-enter all those sort of and data out there. So how do we achieve those particular defaulting of the data? That is something which comes up in terms of these particular business rules. In terms of the validations, if I give an example in terms of each of country will have uh, its own identity, right? If you talk about, and India, we have these Aadhaar numbers which are being there. In US, you will have the SSN numbers. In Nordics, you will have this pension numbers and so on. So how do we ensure those, okay, those particular numbers, those particular key identity are being key in as per the specific formats out there, right? So those kind of and validations are something which we are able to put in using these sort of and business rules. Then we jump on to the different role-based permissions. Now, in terms of HR, you always have a different personas which are being available, whether that persona is related to the employee, managers, or to the HR business partner, HR administrators, or the system administrators which are being there. So different set of these particular persona should be able to view different set of the data and different set of the key in data, what they want to do it, what kind of and access they should be able to have in terms of the viewing it, view the data perspective and all, right? So for example, if there are any sort of an bank data which is being available, that should be only visible to the employee as such. It should not be even available to the managers or some sort of an other HR business partner, but it should be available definitely to the system administrators and so on, right? So how do we ensure that that is being done? And then there are other set of the information such as details of your compensation information. These compensation information should only be available to the HR business partners or the system administrator altogether, right? If you talk about the different ratings which are being coming in, right? So there are different cards which are being available. Then those particular ratings should be initially be only available to the managers and the HR business partner, whereas employees should not be viewing it. So in this particular topic of the role-based permission, we go through the details. What are the different roles? What are the different groups which are being available? What are the target groups which are there? What are the granted groups which are being available? How do we troubleshoot these particular role-based permissions? Which particular user has which set of the permissions which are being available? That is something we deep dive into it. Specifically focusing, emphasizing on this role-based permission because this is one of the key area in the HR specifically, right? That is something is very commonly being used across all sort of end projects. Even if you are creating any sort of the new set of the data structures or the MDF objects and all, you will still have to touch base all these particular role-based permissions as well. So once we are done with the role-based permissions, then we jump into the different set of the import and export of the data. Import and export of the data can be applicable for your implementation for as well as for your support project. If yeah, go ahead. Yeah, you had question.
No, sir, I don't think so.
Okay.
Sri was
Okay.
talking to
So
sir.
in terms of the import and export of the data which are being there, right? So that's where we try to learn about different what are the different set of the data structures which are being there and how do we import that data or export that data from the system. Now this particular export of the data can also be related to the reporting, a simple story report, how we are able to see that particular data into the different graphical formats and so on, or it can be as complex as that, okay, passing on this particular information or the data for the integration purposes, right? So those are the topics also which we covered it out there in the integrations and the reporting part. Once we discuss about the import and export of the data, we deep dive into the events and the event reasons out there. Event reason derivation is more of now being driven by the business rules again. So that is also something that we go in the deep dive. What are these events and the event reasons that we are talking about? These are nothing but the different live events which are being available at the employees, like this hire, rehire, transfers, promotions, uh, all these sort of and different live events that we talk about, right? These are nothing but a different event. How do we capture that as per the different reasons of it so that that is available also for the reporting purposes to the organization levels. So that is something, then it is subcategorized or being additionally being categorized into the different event regions. So one event you will have it under the hire, what kind of an hiring it is it an lateral hiring, is it an extension of the business that you are looking out for the replacement of an existing resource out there. So once you have these different categories in these live events, then it is will be useful in terms of reporting it out to the employee headcount perspective or different sort of an reporting perspective. So those are the aspects that we covered in this particular event and inventories. Okay. Any questions so far till now, whatever we discuss in terms of the syllabus? Okay.
Ankit, Nikhil,
No, no.
Okay.
Right now,
Fine.
no questions, sir.
Rasika,
No, sir.
Okay. So once we cover till this particular point in time, then we have a good understanding of the data structure, then we have a good understanding of the employee data, we have a good understanding of the roles, permissions which are being available. Then we deep dive into the different sort of an workflow. So when we talk about the workflow, whether that workflow should be 1 level, 2 level, 3 level, 4 level, 5 level, whatever the number of levels it should be. How do we ensure that if an employee who is raising a request, then the request goes to the manager? But whereas if a request is being raised by a manager himself, then it should ensure either it goes to the HR business partners or it is directly approved in the system. So these are the different set of the workflows that we covered in this particular workflow and workflow configuration topics out there. Previously, we touched upon the import and export of the data. Integration Center is one of the tool which is available within the SuccessFactors to ensure that data is being exported out of the SuccessFactors system, or it can be imported into the SuccessFactors system as well. Because overall, if you look at any of these ERP systems, those are always required to have an exchange of the data between your HR systems to the your other corporate systems, whether that can be a finance system, whether that can be your fraud and authentication perspective, your Active Directory or the Microsoft related ones, or for any sort of an web publishing or for the payroll purposes, sending this particular HR data to those particular systems. So this is one of the tool. Of course, there are different tools which are being available from an integration perspective, but this is Integration Center is a tool which is embedded, which is directly available within the SuccessFactors. So this is where we go through in deep diving when exactly to use this particular tool, what kind of an capability this particular tool has, and we will go through and live examples about that. Okay, what kind of an data we are able to get, fetch it from the system, create and different sort of an output, whether it is an CSV file, XML files, and so on and so forth. Right. In terms of any of the HR projects, reporting is the most important topic. So in this particular reporting, we will go through that. Okay, how do we create simple sort of an table report so that that data can be exported, can be consumed for an administrator perspective to check it. Or if you want to create an simple sort of an table, pie charts, any sort of an bar charts which are being available, any sort of an key figures that we want to put in, right? So those sort of and quick reporting, how we are able to do that into the system, that is something we'll cover in this particular reporting topics as well. The final and the last topic would be in terms of the different error handling. Now there can be, while everybody talks about the different features and all, but error handling is one of the important topic. In this particular topic, you covered about how do we, where exactly we check not only the data or the data related error, but system configuration related errors as well. These are very helpful to read so that we understand that what are the errors which are being occurring in our configuration, and that is the reason we are not able to get the intended process flow, get the intended results out there. So that is something we covered into this error handling topic in the last one. At at each point of each and every of this particular topic, you will be given with the different smaller assignments, right? You'll be guided with those particular assignments out there that okay, this is something that okay, a business scenario perspective, this is an challenge or this is a requirement from a different customers which are being there, right? And how do we ensure that that is something is configurable or available within the success factor system. So you will be given with to create some of the workflows. You'll be given with to create some of the new permission rules, new business rules to be created, and so on and so forth. Right. So that's how overall this particular program or this particular sessions will be structured, and we will be covering up at a key aspect of the employee central model. So overall, our aim is by the end of this particular session, you should be able to in a position that you are able to confidently configure the employee central system altogether by yourself, right? And we will also be touching base upon some of the key community topics or the different sort of and websites which are being available within the help documentation of the success factors and the different forums which are being available where we are able to validate all these particular questions or any sort of a new configurations altogether. So this is what we will be covering from the syllabus perspective in this particular Employee Central training module.